brilliant actually to see you. I love to see you popping up here.
Oh yeah, that's my daughter.
Hello darling, how are you? Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
How are you?
How are you, bro? Thank you. I'm tired, I don't know about cool. My day started at 3 a.m. in Vienna.
How are you?
See you, man. See you, man. Good day, I think. Yeah, it has been. Alright, George. How's it going?
And then George looking gangsterish.
Well, we need to do that this time. I see we've got the police there. Salam. How are you, Bill? How's things?
No, we didn't even neighbours. Most neighbours, we didn't even realise. I suppose it could get kind of in and knock on his door.
You're right.
Yeah, it's got to call him. What you WhatsApp him? Yeah. All we wanted was I think
Bradford Moor always has the best of it. Not necessarily anything else, but the best of it. Well, they've put a giant banner right opposite the mosque, yeah?
Over to Mr. George Galloway, who will speak a little bit about that. And then if there's anybody, I think there's one or two other speakers who wanted to come and say a few words. So without further ado, may I please present to you Mr. George Galloway. Give him a big hand, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Brothers, sisters, comrades and friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I was here on Monday night in this very mosque talking to some very shocked people, one of whom had been the man who had been in the mosque on Saturday afternoon, exactly 1 week ago almost, to the hour, who had been forced to confront the 10 uniformed fascists who forced their way in here into this mosque and into several other mosques. They boasted 10. We've not been able to identify 10 yet. Don't worry, I don't need it. They've not been able to identify 10, but they boasted that it was 10. They also boasted that they'd done the same thing at the Lord Mayor's house, forcing their way into his house in his absence and terrifying his daughter. So we know they terrified the mayor's daughter, and we know they frightened some old men in some of these mosques that they invaded, which is not the bravest act that any such organization has ever done. It's quite cowardly, actually, but it was the most significant act that any of these organizations have ever done. We've had a lot of these Islam-hating, Muslim-hating, racist organizations in the past, of course. We've had the National Front, the BNP, the EDL, and all of them have caused trouble for Muslims individually on the streets or outside mosques. But none of them had the gall to actually enter, not one but many mosques in one city in one afternoon, in uniform, trampling around inside the mosque, wearing their shoes, handing out Bibles, which almost certainly they've never read, and almost certainly the people they were handing them to knew the Bible better than they did, handing out hate literature. It was described in the media as flyers. We have a picture of the flyer in question, which defamed the Prophet himself, defamed Pakistanis, and defamed Muslims in general as pedophiles, as perverts, as groomers. And the old man that they confronted in this mosque, they asked him, where are the girls? Where are the girls that you're grooming? Are they in here? Are they in there? Etc. This operation that they pulled was an extremely well organized one. It was done with semi-military precision. They knew what times they were coming. They didn't show up at Jummah to be confronted by 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 people. No, they chose their times very carefully. They arrived in 2 motor cars, which they parked side by side like a kind of police raid. The woman opened the doors, took the pictures, took the videos, and the men rushed in. And indeed the same thing, same drill when they were leaving. Now, this is a significant development in the tactics of these far-right racist organizations. And we have to take them at their word. They're going to do it again. They're going to do it again in Bradford. They're going to do it again in Yorkshire. They're going to do it again elsewhere in the country. And you can see why. It's put them right to the top of the charts in far-right organizational terms. They have, in one act or one afternoon, they have eclipsed the EDL and the BNP, who can only, I'm sure, grit their teeth as they see a rival far-right organization being able to boast of this operation. So we're clearly dealing with potentially dangerous people because they are a breakaway from the EDL, a breakaway from the BNP, who've left these 2 organizations because they say these 2 organizations are not extreme enough for them, are not confronting Islam and Muslims sharply enough for their liking. We know that they have very close links with Ulster loyalists in the north of Ireland, which means potentially they have access to weapons rather obviously and easily. We know that they know the shock value of what they did. So there is every reason to believe that they will be back. So on Monday night, I drove up from London. I was in Parliament at Westminster, lobbying the Home Office for an explanation, not just of what had happened, but of their silence, because I suppose, in a way, just as shocking as the acts themselves was the total silence with which they were greeted. I asked the question on television or on radio, I ask it again now. If 10 Muslims had forced their way into 10 churches and forced their way into Boris Johnson's house to hand out Qurans and leaflets denouncing paedophile priests, can you imagine the scandal that would have been? Can you imagine the media, Sky News, the Daily Mail, the Sun? It would still be on the front page. 7 days later, there'd be radio phone-in shows about it. What can we do? Can we deport them? Can we take their passports? Are they really British? It would have been a major, maybe the major, national media story. Shafiq Bai's in the media. I'm sure after I've spoken he'll confirm that. It would have been really big news. But in this case it was no news at all. None at all. And not only did the media ignore it, the politicians ignored it. The people who represent the people who use the mosques were absolutely silent. I've just been over in Toller, the ward of Imran Hussein, who's not a quiet man, by the way. It's quite a foghorn, if you get my drift. But it took him 3 days to speak on Facebook about what had happened in Bradford, and he's the deputy leader of the city council. If I'd been the deputy leader of the city council, I would have been in all these mosques before I even got there. But they were absent, without leave, hiding. And actually, the city council has sunk to the occasion. The Labour MP for Bradford South still hasn't spoken about it. Exactly 1 week later, they say he's on holiday. I don't know where he is. It must be Timbuktu, because he appears not to even know that it actually has even happened. And David Ward was several days late and absent without leave also. So that's just as shocking to me, the silence, as the acts themselves. But the acts themselves are more significant. I toured all these mosques. I met with the imams, the presidents, chairmen of mosque committees, and others, including the Council of Mosques in Bradford. And I urged them to take certain steps. First of all, to insist, as I did. We went directly to the police commander on Monday and demanded that he provide protection for the property and the people. And I see that they have. There's a police car just around the corner. There's been a police presence at many of the mosques over the last couple of days. I think that the commander, Simon Atkin, is serious when he says that he's taking it seriously. He's collecting statements. He brought back a superintendent from holiday, the woman who investigated the Hamza Khan baby scandal, who's quite a significant police officer with a big future. He's given her the job of heading up the inquiry, and he brought her back from holiday to do so, which is a good sign. A sign that the police are taking it seriously, more seriously than the politicians or the media. So that's the first thing. We have to demand that the police defend the people and the property, or we'll have to defend ourselves. And that will not be a good look. It will not look good for the police, because it will show that we've got no confidence in them. It will not look good for us, because it's never a great picture. And it will be bad for Bradford. But of course, if they don't protect us, we have to protect ourselves. The second thing I asked them, pointed out to them, we viewed the CCTV at the Abu Bakr Mosque, and frankly it was useless. It captured all the events, but the quality of the film was such that if you had been relying on identification, you would not have been able to convict them on the basis of that CCTV, because the pictures were too poor. Luckily, we don't have to worry about identification, because they've all identified themselves in their own media work. But if we had been depending on it, it wouldn't have worked. So there's no point in having CCTV. In fact, a lot of houses and shops and restaurants and so on have CCTV for a deterrent effect. And actually, quite often, it's not very good, sometimes not even working at all. But the mosques can't afford that, because if these people come back, we need to have sharp, clear, efficient CCTV coverage. So I'm not in the business of selling CCTV, but I am encouraging the mosques to buy it. The third thing I'm encouraging is that we need to be able to all communicate with each other very quickly in the case of an emergency. So I've urged people in the mosques to set up a telephone tree, starting with the nearest houses to the mosque and working outwards, so that the first thing that's done is dial 999, and the second thing that's done is phone one person or two persons, who then phone one or two, and before you can say Jack Robinson, we've got a crowd of young men able to do so, to be at the mosque to defend it. And lastly, we have to understand that these organizations don't come out of thin air. They're coming out of a gale of Islamophobia that the media is generating, and the political class, especially in the run-up to an election, is generating. When Nigel Farage speaks, or when the Tories echo Farage, and Labour and the Liberal Democrats mildly echo them, all of that is poisoning the atmosphere against immigrants, and particularly you, Muslims, who of course mostly are not immigrants at all. But that's not what they mean when they say immigrants. They mean people who are your colour rather than mine. The media, for 2 weeks before this event, has been absolutely infatuated with the question of halal chicken in Subway sandwiches. If you Google it, you'll see acres of coverage on this subject. And it's no coincidence that these thugs who attacked the mosques also attacked the Subway here in Bradford. Attacked a sandwich shop because it might be selling halal chicken sandwiches. So this atmosphere of hatred, fear, loathing of Muslims, even though it's totally illogical, I mean, this infatuation with grooming that they have. Some of them look like they should be at the barber doing a bit of grooming themselves, by the way. But this infatuation with grooming, of course, flies in the face of the fact that the vast majority of grooming and paedophilia cases in Britain involve such well-known Muslims as Jimmy Mohammed Saville, Stuart Abdul Hall, Max, Hamza, Clifford, and so on. The vast majority of these dirty criminals that commit these foul crimes are of course not Muslim, not Pakistani. Of course, there are some dirty criminals in our community, of course, there is, in every community. But 90%, 90% of offences of this kind are committed by non-Muslim white people. Yet if you listen to their obsessive propaganda, you would imagine that the Muslim community is out roaming around the country looking for girls and children to abuse. So we need politicians and media to stand up against this. And the performance, say this in the presence of a media representative here, the performance of the media in this regard has been simply pitiful. One guy on LBC yesterday, James O'Brien, is it James O'Brien? One guy, James O'Brien, destroyed Nigel Farage, destroyed his hypocrisy, his racism, his double standards, destroyed him in one interview. But it was only on LBC, and it's only a week, less than a week to the polls. Where were all the other journalists? Why didn't they do the job that James O'Brien did on LBC? It's worth looking for on YouTube. You'll be impressed. I don't know the man. From what I hear, he's not any political friend of ours. But he did his job as a journalist properly by puncturing Farage's pretensions in this regard on LBC yesterday. The media has to step up to the plate. The politicians have to step up to the plate. The people have to be vigilant and organized, because these people will come back. And when they come back, God forbid, they may do things worse than the things they did last Saturday afternoon, and then we'll really have a problem. This is the 25th anniversary coming up of the Salman Rushdie so-called riots in Bradford. We don't want people to remember that. We don't want these pictures back out again. We don't want a repeat. And we are determined that this issue should not be made bigger than it is, but equally that it cannot be made smaller than it is. It is an important new development, and we can't ignore it. We have to organise ourselves to protect the places and the people that are precious to us against it. Wassalamu alaikum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, George. I just want to add one thing to that. Everything that needed to be said, George has said very eloquently. But these racist bigots who come into our city, they come with one purpose, and that's to divide us into different sections. Now, I've been campaigning as a candidate in this ward for respect. I've been campaigning in this ward for several weeks now, and it's become very clear to me that one thing that everybody here asks about is, where are you from? What's your background? Where was your dad from? Where was your grandfather from? Are you a Jat? Are you Chaudhry? Are you this? Are you that? And that's something is abhorrent. Now, if these people try to divide us up, we kind of do a good job dividing ourselves up into Sunnis and Shias. This must stop. If there's one message that I'd like to give to people in this ward is, become united, become one people. We're human beings, we're Muslims, and we can be one people. When something like this happens, we should come together and show these bigots that we will not be divided. On some issues we may have our political differences, but in spite of those differences, we are one people. Whatever school your Chaudhry goes to is the same school that your Raja goes to. And all these services that we demand of our councils are actually something that we all share in the community. So we need to get out of this, caste and creed and religious differences, because we have much more in common. The second thing I wanted to say was, the elections are only a few days away from now. I've challenged at hustings only 2 days ago ex-councillor Riaz and the sitting councillor Shafiq, and I said, guys, when the bigots invaded your mosques, and this mosque is more or less owned by your brotherly system here, what did you do? Did you go into the mosque and ask? Did you find out from the people who were affected? Did you go and speak to the imams? And he put his head down as if in shame. And somebody in the audience actually said, you should hang your head down in shame. I said, when we found out, George found out on the Sunday evening that this had happened, next morning cancelled his engagements, and he was down in Bradford, and I was with him when we visited every mosque, and he had the meeting with the police. Now we need politicians who take action. We need politicians who are strong voices and can take the bull by the horn and not be afraid who they're going to lose along the way. If you speak for peace and justice and equality, then you speak for peace and justice and equality, not your brotherly system. So one message I'd like to give is, let's all guys get together, we're all one people, and when these people come into our city, let's stand here like Spartacus saying, we're all Spartacus, we're all Muslims, we're all human beings, and you will not divide us. I wanted to pass that message on to you. Now, before we finish, I know George has got to go, I'd like to ask Brother Shafiq, when these things happen, there's one face who you will see on Sky TV and BBC, standing up for the people, and our communities. It's Brother Shafiq, Muhammad Shafiq. It's a pleasure to have you here, Shafiq, from all the way from Blackburn, and I would like you to say a few words, please.
I'll keep it very brief as well. I'll leave the party politics to the politicians as an independent broadcaster. I just wanted to come and show solidarity, to thank George for all that he's doing for the people of Bradford West. People keep asking me, where is George? And every time I come to Bradford, George is in Bradford. So anybody who wants to see George,
and when he's not in Bradford, he's in Parliament, working for the people of Bradford.
I've known George for 16 years. It's a pretty long relationship, and one thing I know is that he's very passionate and committed to the issues that affect our communities. The fact that we saw fascists come to the mosque here in Bradford, they came to my hometown of Rochdale and Manchester a few months ago, and we have got to stand united. We've got to take action, not just about phoning people, as George was saying, but I actually think we need to set up patrols. Yesterday I was speaking in a meeting in Tower Hamlets. You know it well, a big Orthodox Jewish community. They've got their own security initiative, a voluntary security system where people look after the mosque and patrol the streets. And actually, I think that's the direction Bradford should be going in. That's the council of mosques, the imams, community leaders, the councillors, the politicians, everybody coming together and saying, let's do something, will have lasting impact, working in partnership with the police to make sure that happens. Because, you know, on this occasion, they only came and give out a few Bibles. In future occasions, they will be using violence. They've threatened violence and they'll be using violence. We've talked about the issue of grooming. We condemn it as Muslims. The people who do such crimes don't do so in our name. Well, we've confronted this issue. I'm single-handedly speaking out about this on many occasions, and I do that because we believe we have to give a strong voice. But as George said, 87% of sexual offences against children committed in this country are committed by white men. It doesn't mean that we hold the whole of white society responsible. So, you know, it's good to be here to support Arshad. He's a good friend. But I think the important thing is we've got to unite. We've got to stand as one community and really focus on how we can make our mosque safe. You know, we've seen in the aftermath of Rigby, our mosque attacked and firebombed. We don't want that to happen here in Bradford or anywhere else. So it's up to you to put the pressure on the politicians and make sure that, you know, we set up services, we set up protection teams to protect our mosque and our community. Because I was spoken to Muhammad Salim. You may not know him. He was the 80-year-old pensioner who was murdered by a fascist on the streets of Birmingham last year. And I spoke to his family, and they devastated the fact they're losing people and the fact that we as a community are silent. So I suppose in conclusion, you know, solidarity to George and to Arshad and everybody here who've done some magnificent work over the last 7 days to highlight this issue. I've tried to do my bit on the BBC and Sky over the last few days as well, but I think it's so important that we highlight this issue, and I wish you well. Obviously, politically speaking, I can't say good luck, but as a Muslim, I pray for you. If your intentions are clean, Allah give you success in your campaign. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There is I was speaking to an elderly gentleman who was having a Bible pushed into his hand and being told, why don't you stop grooming? Why don't you stop grooming? Why don't you? As if he was grooming people. You know, he was in the mosque trying to worship Allah, you know, pray. No Muslim agrees with grooming. No human being of any religion will agree with grooming. It's a terrible thing to do, and we must all stand in solidarity against those that do it. And if you're going to give a Bible to a Muslim, he's probably going to do what? Kiss it? Because he believes in the Bible, it's his holy book. So they failed on those counts there. They tried to create trouble, they tried to create divisive policies here, tried to fight one against the other. We didn't rise to that. And if they do come again, as George said, we've got to be prepared. They probably will come down again, but we've got to be prepared in a non-violence way. Let the police deal with it. If the police fail, then we have a duty to protect our places of worship, our places of accommodation and our streets, and our communities. But first of all, it's the duty of the police and the councillors, who pretty much do nothing except turn up after 5 years and ask for votes. And I've got a hosting, next couple of days with the two blokes from this area, and I'm going to hold them to account. We're going to ask them hard, tough questions there. And normally, going by the hostings I had with them already, they'll have nothing to say. Nothing to say.
Why did they say twice? I don't get it.
Sorry?
Why did they say twice?
Because they did nothing. And I asked them a direct question. I said, what did you do? And both of them hummed their head down. They did nothing. And then the audience spoke up and they said they have done nothing.
Oh, sorry, why did they do nothing? All the council is just like...
Well,
why did they do nothing?
I think that's a better question than it at first appears, because I genuinely don't know the answer to that. I did say to you, if it was me, I would have seized that moment. Yeah. If I'd been one of the council leaders in this city facing the threat that they face from us, I would have been second place to no man on this question. I would have immediately left the city chambers, gone to every mosque. I'd have been immediately demanding that the Home Secretary speak up. I'd be demanding that the police, frankly, have a slightly better presence than they have even at this mosque, which was attacked a week ago. It's just as well that these people haven't come back today, because the police have gone. I would have, as a political figure myself, I would have spoken out loud and long. Why they did not, I really, genuinely don't understand it, except that they are so poor. The leadership in Bradford is so weak, so poor, that perhaps they are just not capable of finding the words and finding the spirit to express those words.
Maybe they're just puppets rather than leaders.
Well,
Well, we had Guzanfer Khalid, ex-Lord Mayor. He's a councillor, sitting councillor,
Ex-Lord
did
Mayor.
nothing.
You should know better.
Shafiq has been a councillor for, what, 3 times? Did nothing. Riaz, the Lib Dem guy, been a councillor several times, but did nothing.
That makes sense.
Our deputy leader of the council, Imran Hussain, did nothing until 3 days later when he already heard that this man did. And Imran Hussein's father has the gall to stand and say he's a blot on the name of Muslims, when he was the only one who came from London and defended the Muslim community.
So they're there just by the backing of their families.
They're there because the brotherly system supports them.
that's it,
My
but
point earlier on, if we
they're
can
not leaders.
change the brotherly system, we can change the politics in Bradford. Because then we can stand for principles and something, a vision and some things that we stand for. But if I'm asking, knocking on people's doors, say, where are you from? Are you Bais? All right, then I'll support you then. Are you Chaudhry? Well, are you this?
Still going on, eh?
It still goes on, unfortunately. It's shameful, shameful thing. that goes on.
yes.
I gate crashed a closed meeting yesterday in Abu Bakr Mosque. Dave Green was present, Dave Ward was present, Shafiq was present, I don't think Riaz was present, but all the imams, all the political leaders so-called, Imran Hussain was also there. Every single one of them was sat there praising each other about what they'd done.
Mutual respect society.
They're all praising each other. I don't think you was invited, George.
I wasn't invited, no.
Yeah.
It's
I
not
don't
my
think-
constituency here, but
Yeah,
that didn't stop me coming here first.
Yeah. And so they were all there praising each other. Not one of them mentioned George's name, who rose to the occasion, who was leading, spearheading the whole campaign. Not one of them mentioned him. They were too busy praising each other all this time.
That's very funny.
There's something they want to say. They don't want to bring up, do they?
Yeah,
Sure they're not.
Dave Ward started mumbling. He mumbled on for about 2 minutes and I couldn't take it no more, so I had to leave.
I understand.
But maybe it
Well,
was
I
his
think what they
resignation.
want- they want to
Any other
provoke
questions?
violence.
Councillor Shafiq tried to take credit at the hosting of the day for Westfield being built.
Yeah.
Until I lost, I don't lose my rag very often, but I actually lost it with him. In his own way, we did, the Westfield is now this building. I said, hang on, mate, stop there one moment. 8 years you sat in your seat taking the salary and we did nothing. And then when we get elected, we have a respect party come to
Yes.
town. And the building is now halfway built, right? Westfield isn't a hole in the the centre of the city anymore. Something is happening.
Yeah.
So stop taking credit. These people are opportunists, and we vote for them. It's our fault for voting for these
Too
people.
lazy, that's
because
why.
we use the brotherly system. We use that. It's time for us to end that. Now, thank you very much, brothers. I know. You have to go somewhere. I know
have to go to
George is
Keighley,
very,
yeah.
very busy. He's got to Keighley. George, I really appreciate your support and solidarity. As always, I mean, words fail us sometimes when we have to thank you because you do so much.
Not at all.
And thank you very much.
Well done.
Going, eh?
Goodbye, darling. See you. No, how are you, brother? I'm fine.
He needs to grow.
Driving my car. Yeah, that's nice. I'm fine, thank you. Yourself? Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome, sir.